Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first ever BadCameo Logic session breakdown. So it's going to be a good time today. What we're going to do, if you've never seen one of these before, is take a look behind the scenes on our latest track, which is called So Cold. Hopefully you've been enjoying it. It's been out for a little bit now, and got a lot more stuff in the works for that song, so stay tuned there. But if you haven't heard the song, no worries. We're going to listen to it right now. Just take a little listen to that first thing, so that way we're all on the same page. It should be a good time. For those of you who have seen these before, you kind of know what to expect. We're going to be just diving into the little bits and pieces that make the BadCameo studio sound happen. So there's a lot going on, maybe that you wouldn't even notice necessarily the first time around. Lots of layering and samples and transitions and effects, all that juicy stuff. So if you are a music production nerd like I am, hopefully you'll have a good time, because I'm going to be having fun talking about it, that's for sure. I had fun making the track. We all had fun playing it live together to lay down the basics for it, and it'll be great fun. So I started off with a little bit of a misnomer because I actually mixed the track in Pro Tools. So that's where we're going to be listening to it. I do use Logic to do all the production and composition and anything MIDI related, that kind of stuff. But once that's all done, I bounce it out to Pro Tools and put it together there. And I'll get a little bit into the reason why after. But let's just take a listen to the song here and let's see what we're working with. See you guys on the other side. Well, that is classic Pro Tools. I forgot to change the buffer size because I have this thing jam-packed full of plugins here. So, yeah, if anyone ever is in Pro Tools and that happens to them, all you have to do is hop in, change the buffer size. If you're in mixing mode, the longer the better. That way the computer has a little bit of time to think. Cool. All right, now that that's all fixed, let's jump right back in here. That was not a special effect, but yeah, it might be kind of cool. I'll have to keep that in mind. Here we go.
Your bedroom
But that's the track. It's at its core, it's a pop song. It's certainly got some exceptions in there in terms of structure and kind of how it approaches the storyline. But let's start with the basics here. And the way we went about recording this is, well, first of all, as I mentioned earlier, we lay everything down in Logic as far as the production and composition. So everything you see in purple there kind of matches my shirt. Shout out to So Far, Charlotte Chapter, keeping it real. Got the drums all in purple here, quite a bit of tracks, and can talk a little bit about how they were actually recorded. And then I got bass and guitar here. So we all set up live in the same room together, and what you're looking at behind me here is the control room, and maybe we'll take a little video tour of that sometime. Not today, we'll keep it focused on the session. But on the other side of the wall where I'm facing right now is our live room, and it's a sound-treated room, and we managed to get some pretty solid drum recordings out of there. So when we all sat down to do the rhythm section live, drums, bass, and guitar, all three of us did that together, and drums were the only thing playing out loud. The bass is DI right here. As you can tell, there's no bleed. And let's take a look at this guitar. So there aren't any effects on here, but there is an amp simulator and a little handy guy called RC20. So as far as the amp, we just got the Logic brown face combo with a Royer mic simulation on there. So it gives it a really nice, mellow, kind of rolled off sound. It's not overly bitey in the guitar. It's not too icy, it doesn't hurt your ears or anything like that. And just gives it a nice mellow tone. Very easy on the ears. It makes a great foundation for the rest of the track. So that guitar is going pretty much through the whole thing. And speaking of RC20, I use this to kind of roll off the high end just a little bit more on that guitar. And you can ignore the vinyl preset. I just wound up using a different type of saturation. And that's kind of what this plugin does. It lets you do different types of saturation or noise. You can do different vinyl simulations, VHS. It's great for anything lo-fi. So if you're into that kind of music or you want that kind of sound, this is a great little hidden gem. And RC20 is a plugin that I had heard about from a Jacob Collier Logic session breakdown, funny enough. So who knows, maybe something that you find here today will be useful in your own productions or even learning more about the song if you're not into this type of stuff. Perfectly fine. So here's the original guitar track. You can see it's all kind of spliced together like that. So that's different pieces of different takes that we liked, whether a certain chord voicing was cool or a little inflection or something like that. But back to RC20, here's the guitar without it. Perfectly reasonable. And with it on, it's very subtle on this track. I use it just a little bit to give it just a little push and help cut through, even though the guitar is pretty rolled off. I didn't want it to be harsh at all. And you can kind of focus which range of frequencies you want to add it in. For this, I just left it as is, and I just felt like it helped the guitar sound fill up a little bit more. Saturation is great for that. If you haven't used that, definitely give it a try. It's a great way to shape the sound and give it a little more body without necessarily compressing it, although it can have that effect if you push it. So let's hop back over to Pro Tools real quick, and let's just listen to a little bit of the rhythm section that we did all live in the room together. And this will be the mixed version, so it'll be a little more beefed up than what you just heard. Let's check out the last chorus. It's got some sweet drum fills from our buddy Dan here, so let's give him a shout out and check out some of that. Love that one. Very cool. Yeah, I love how that last chorus came out. Those, especially with everything else happening in the song, those power fills give it a lot of push that I'm personally a big fan of. So we started with that. That was our first process. And circling back to Logic, we sort of recently just started using this for our new round of projects. Back when we were working on our first album, BadCameo Out Loud, I kept having this issue of maxing out the track count in Pro Tools. But I like to experiment, and I like to do layering and sound design and that kind of stuff. So, and sometimes I would just kind of like piling on different sounds so I could plug different things in and see what works, see what I like. And yeah, like I said, during the album, I was maxing that out pretty consistently. So, if you want to use like 5 different synths to make like a cool layer or something like that, you're going to reach that track count pretty quickly. So enter Logic. It's got a limit of 1,000 tracks, I believe, and that is way more than I'll ever need, hopefully, fingers crossed. And it's been a lot better, at least as far as the production, because I can just sort of run free, not have to worry about it. It's a real creativity killer when you have to, stop and like delete tracks and stuff like that, which maybe isn't the best way to work, being non-committal, but I like to plug and play different things and see what happens. So why not, right? So we started with the rhythm section, as I said. And then after that, let's hop back into Pro Tools. Let's see, if I recall correctly, the next thing I did was start with some keyboards. As many of you probably know, I'm usually playing keys live, as well as bass for certain songs, either split left hand, right hand bass, or just playing the bass guitar. And sometimes on bass too. So we have a lot of different sounds I would need to cover in recording. But doing it all live like that was nice because I could just focus on bass and getting the groove here. And, before we dive into keys, the main lick of this song, we have Londo on a lovely red Strat. So here's that lick. So catchy. I was always a big fan of that. Our former guitar player, Will Huseman, shout out to Will, he sort of came up with that, and with Londo, they developed into something really, really nice. So I wanted to bring out that lick a little bit more, and I experimented with a lot of different kinds of sounds, but ultimately I landed on using a sax line here. And I do play saxophone. I started playing saxophone in 4th grade. I was in jazz band, marching band, the whole works. I'm a little rusty lately, so I'm not going to be ripping any bebop solos over giant steps or something like that. But I wanted to, bring out that lick a little bit more, so I layered in some sax with it, and check this out. So as you probably noticed, it's a little bit synthetic sounding almost. And let me play the raw sax for you real quick. Let me just take off some of these plugins here. So here it is, raw plus with a little bit of tuning, just to make it all fit. Lovely. Had to move a lot of air to get that high. As I said, I'm not the greatest sax player in the world. So, and here's that with just a guitar. I really wanted a soaring melody line to start the song strong and sort of have a little musical motif that would stick with you throughout it. But yeah, let's talk this sax sound real quick because it is not what you might expect. So here's just the sax with all the effects. Oh, let me throw the reverb on there too. Why not? Cool. So what I did there is I used a little Alter Boy. So this is a pretty fun pitch shifting plugin, and you can get all sorts of wonky sounds with it. If you ever listen to pop music that has the really slowed down vocals that sound like they're in molasses, like yeah, it's good chance it's something like this. There are a lot of plugins that do similar things, but Check this out. So what I did here was pitch the saxophone down an octave, and if you look over the mix knob here, I blended it in, well, give me a percentage, let's see, 42.5%, very important number, don't forget it, there's going to be a quiz. And I drove it pretty hard here, so that gives it kind of that buzzy, almost synthesizer sound that you hear on top of the lowered saxophone. And I also lowered the formant a little bit by an octave as well. But check out what happens when I kind of play around with the formant. The formant is kind of the defining qualities of a note that it hits. So you can adjust the pitch and the formant separately, which is pretty cool. So if I have the formant at 0 and the pitch turned down, check this out. And all the way down. It almost makes it sound like a baritone sax or something like that, in addition to the alto that I played this on normally. So that was a fun little thing, just to give that sax a little extra meat. The alto on its own, for me, needed a little more beef. It was a little bit thin. And while we're on this lick, I got a nice screaming organ here, all together. Hallelujah. I love a crunchy, crunchy organ. Something about the song, and it's in B flat, which is a great gospel key, so I figured it needed a little bit of that kind of flavor in there. So I went ahead and added that too. That's always a good move. So, and let's take a look at what else we got here. I got some Fender Rhodes playing the chords, and I believe I used the real Rhodes for this. Yeah. Yep, lovely. So what I did on that was I played the part twice. As you can see, I have 2 different tracks here, both hard panned. So hopefully that's coming across on the speakers there. I'm sure it is. And that just really adds a nice warmth to it for me. I also had RC20 on there, the plugin we were talking about earlier, to give it a little bit of that crunch. As you probably heard, there's a little bit of fuzz on top of that there. And if you use just a little bit in the context of a mix, it can really help things poke out without being overly bright or harsh. It's just a nice way to add a little bit of drive. And I've got a Stephen Slate virtual console channel, sort of doing the same thing. It's a lot more subtle, but really any saturation plugin will have a similar thing. If things are a little too clean, I don't know, it just doesn't, for me, the energy isn't the same if something is beautifully pristine. So that's where the real Fender Rhodes came in. And I'll pop a picture of that here. But that's a real Fender Rhodes, 1971, through a Fender Deluxe tube amp. So it just, I already had plenty of warmth coming in, but that RC20 gave it just a little bit of extra crunch that I was looking for. Just makes that key sound so warm. It's like a bed you can lay on, and that's really what I was going for there. So we're kind of working our way up the frequency chain here. And last thing in that intro was this lovely Melotron. Let's just listen to that by itself real quick. It's very quiet, but if you listen, you'll notice it. When it's not there, it doesn't feel the same. Dead simple, just a nice high angelic sound on top. I was trying to keep the frequencies balanced there. That's kind of like sitting on top of everything as far as the treble and bass relationship goes, except maybe the cymbals. That's probably the highest. So here's the intro with everything we've looked at so far. Oh, sorry about that. One more time. So that Meltron is quiet, like I said. But if you listen to sort of in between where the main riff pauses, it kind of pokes through just a little bit there, which gave it like a nice joyous feeling that I was trying to capture, like I said. And that Meltron is a stock with Logic. It's not a real Meltron. That'd be a lot of work. But for those of you who aren't familiar with Meltrons, let me pull up the plugin here real quick. So this is the Meltron plugin for Logic, and such a lovely warm sound. The first thing I think of when I think of Meltron is we get the lovely Strawberry Field sound. So the Beatles use that a lot. And I was starting to say earlier what the Meltron is it's sort of like a cassette tape player almost that's hooked up to a keyboard. So let me go grab a cassette actually. So what the Meltron does is it has a regular keyboard layout externally, but internally it's got a cassette tape loop for every key, and it's not an actual cassette like this. It's just the magnetic part on a loop, so it's circling throughout, and when you play the key it activates that tape, so it plays the sound, and it gives us this really warm, almost kind of grainy sound that's perfect for having a nice like pad type sound, but without having too much harshness in there. It's really nice. And as you probably saw, I had the violin setting for this part. Lovely. So now let's jump back into the beef of it. One of my favorite parts of this song is when it drops down into the first verse. And the three of us were in here one day just trying to figure out how we wanted to structure the song. And I was messing around with the chord progression, excuse me, and started around with this, what I called a Glass Rhodes part. So check this out. It's super refreshing when it comes in. So refreshing. I very few things I love more than a nice creamy Rhodes part. That just feels really good. So I treated this kind of like I did the other Rhodes. This was the plug-in version that Logic comes with by default. They've got a whole vintage electric piano section. Whirlies, Rhodes, it's all there, and got a lot of like flexibility for, let's like take a look here. There's all sorts of effects and stuff and ways you can tweak the sound to make it work how you want it. It's really something. It just sounds so good. So even though I've got the real Rhodes in the other room there, this like really gets the job done. It's so warm. And what I did with this to make it sound even creamier and warmer, which I'm definitely trying to go for here. I did a little compression with a LA2A style compressor. And if you're signed up with, this is the Steven Slate virtual mix rack, and there are so many great plugins in here. It is subscription based, but you can pay it once per year, and it's really not that expensive. They just came out with this within the last few months, this LA2A plugin. So if you don't, there are all kinds of free emulations of this compressor available, and it's great for anything that you want to be sort of gently leveled out, and you can get some great tone out of it too. So let's just play that. Just really mild. I just wanted to get a little bit of extra glue in there, you could say. So that way it's a nice even bed. And then after that, I mixed in a little bit of saturation here with the New York tube emulation. Again, big fan of saturation in general. It really fills up the sound. And you can make your mixes feel a lot louder or seem a lot louder without having to compress the hell out of it with saturation, just because of the way your mind perceives like more saturated sounds. So let's take a listen to that just on its own. Without saturation? With? Again, pretty subtle, but over layers, And with the different instruments, you can get a super fat sound with saturation. So with it off, it's clean, it's very polite, nothing wrong with it. But with it on, it gives it just a little bit of tight bite on top here. And just so you can notice the effect, let me just crank the shit out of it and see how that sounds. So you hear that kind of fuzzy, broken up sound that happens on some of the louder notes. I'm looking for that sort of bite, but just a little less. So I mix it in just a little bit here. Yeah, just blended it in. Gives it a little extra push. And another great thing to do with Rhodes or any sort of keyboard that you want to widen up a little bit is throw a doubler on it. This is the Waves doubler. As you can tell by the UI, it's been around for a while. But this will kind of spread out the signal a little bit and tickle your ears in a nice way that maybe you wouldn't necessarily get from the keyboard just being straight down the middle in mono. Without. And with. So you could get the same effect with like a chorus. It's almost like that. It's slightly detuned. Got the signal separated here. One of them just a few cents sharp and one is a few cents flat. And basically any DAW will come with a free doubler plugin. So I think that's enough about the Rhodes for now. What do you guys think? Let's just feel that drop when it goes down to just that. Cool. So let's check out the next little Easter egg in here. I just love that Rhodes. That excites me. So to mark the second half of the verse, I wanted to give it something to push it a little bit forward in here. So I've got just a really gentle, sort of chimey part here. For me, it just heralds in the new second half of the verse and just pushes it forward. And some chimes. And now we'd be at the chorus. So kind of piggybacking off of that little chime sound there, I've got, let's see, I think I have, oh, that might be it for that section, actually. I love little transitions and things like that that sort of help push the song forward. So, yeah, give it a listen one more time.
Baby, I'm cold with the winter storm in my home. I've got nowhere to go.
And all I used for that was a celeste and another Rhodes, actually. This was the real Rhodes, I believe. Hard pan, of course. Having little elements like that can give the song a lot of, I don't know if professionalism is the right word, but it makes it exciting, having like a little high end, a little something in your ear that it's new. Your brain can latch onto that, and it sort of underscores a section change or something you want to highlight. So speaking of transitions, I got a couple little things coming in to bring the chorus here. So let's take a listen to the rhythm section along with those transitions, and we'll put the Rhodes in there too. Why not? So the first thing I have is this Synthesizer. Nice. So yeah, this is just a profit riser. Unfortunately, I don't have a real profit. That would be pretty cool. But that's what I use there. It's a great effect. But however you get there, using a little riser like that or some sort of swell is a great way to make a section change land just a little bit harder. So check this out. pretty quiet in the overall scheme, and this isn't even all the instruments, but it really does give a little bit of excitement that just tickles my fancy. And I threw the chimes in there, kind of overlapped with that just to usher in the new chorus, or the first chorus rather. So let's hear that with everything.
With the winter storm in my home, I've got nowhere to go. For your bedroom walls, all the time we feel so.
And bam, we're at the chorus. So now I brought the organ back in. I'm a sucker for that organ, and I got some Rhodes hammering away at the chords too. So let's listen to the rhythm section plus these bass level keys, B-A-S-E, that is. Nice. Yeah, so the chorus Rhodes, again, I wanted to have just like a nice fat creamy Rhodes sound. So let's listen to that just on its own, because there's another instance of RC20 coming back in here. And I threw a phaser on it, and this is just a plain kilohertz phaser that also comes with this Slate plugin bundle. Full disclosure, I'm not a shill or I don't have any connection with any of these plugin companies. This is just stuff that I use that I've come to like over the years. So if there's something that I don't like, there's a really good chance that you're not going to see it on these talks here. But yeah, phaser on the Rhodes, it's a great combo. That kind of sound always remind me of something like out of Steely Dan. So here's the Rhodes without it. And here it is totally dry without the RC20 even. With RC. So use a little tube simulation here with a focus more on the top end of things. Well, it looks like I just high passed that, just so I wasn't saturating like the bottom end here. This was the real Rhodes through the Fender Deluxe, great warm sound. And I think I used a Sennheiser 609, I believe, on there. It's the classic guitar amp mic. And you can run the Rhodes through a guitar chain, with guitar pedals and stuff like that, or any synth or keyboard, really. So if you want to get creative with that, you can have a pretty good time there. But let's hear that same thing with the phaser now. I love that sound. It's just so classic. Getting that gives it a nice oscillating movement that is, it's just a great combo. Yeah. So coming up next after that is I have a little bit of clav, some funky clav, just to mark that section change where we do those hits. Bow, bow, bow. Check that out. And again, it's the little things that can help a section change really hit nicely. It's barely there, but it is there. You feel it. So now I got at the chorus, back into pretty much the same thing as the introduction. Got the guitar lick here doing that same thing that you guys heard at the beginning. And I wanted to give this section the same feeling as the intro, but a little bit elevated. So I took out the saxophone for this part for the sake of variety. Got the Rhodes doing it as well. That's the real Rhodes. Bone dry, nothing on it, just to give a little support to that guitar. I've got a synth on it as well. Oh yeah, so sassy. How about that bend though? Oh yeah. That's got attitude for days. And I layered in another organ. It's just playing chords here, I'm pretty sure. Let's check. Oh yeah. Nice. Yeah, so when you put that all together, it is reminiscent of the intro, and the guitar is sort of the common thread there, and the notes themselves, the melody. But it gives it a whole different spin with that combo. Very cool. And the organ for there was just the Logic built-in organ. It's really good. And if you happen to be on Pro Tools, they at least used to include a free organ emulator called DB33. And here it is. It's pretty... It's nice. This one works really well too. I've used this a lot in the past. If I'm making something in Pro Tools, this organ definitely makes a fair bit of appearances. And it's got Leslie simulation for that rotating effect. It's just really nice. Drawbars, basically anything you would expect from a real organ. And one cool thing about this plugin that I didn't always know about is that you can use the Leslie rotating speaker effect on any source, so you don't have to have like a separate plugin for that. So let's throw it on this Rhodes, for example. No, let's do the chorus one. That's a little more jazzed up. So let's take the phaser off just for the demonstration. But if we hop into DB33, you can just put this on any audio track or MIDI track. And what you do is, so normally it's expecting input from the organ itself, but if you hop over to the cabinet, you can do an external input on it. So in this case, the external input would just be the track that's already there. So let's take the organ all the way down because we don't need that. And let's listen to it just through here. So that's pretty cool. It's on slow mode right now, so it almost kind of sounds like the phaser with it rotating around. But let's put it on fast and let's see what kind of excitement that adds. I always thought that was a cool sound. So a fun fact about the rotating speakers is the Beatles used to do a lot of experimenting with that, putting like vocals through it, and sometimes even drums they might have done. But yeah, there's all sorts of stuff you can do with this. So like slap this on something that you might not expect. It doesn't have to be keys. It could be guitar, vocals, anything really. It's just a fun effect. And it really just kind of adds a little excitement here. And especially if you like, duplicate a track and like tuck a little bit of this in, it's pretty fun. You can play around with all the parameters here and get a totally different sound. Again, built right into Pro Tools. If you don't have it with your installation, I believe it's in the Air Instrument bundle, which has a lot of great stuff. So that is a really handy thing that's kind of helped me out a lot for adding excitement. So now we're coming into the second verse, and I wanted to expand even more on those transitions coming in here. So what I did was I layered in a bunch of mostly the same chord with a different voicing. It's just a B flat major 7. And check this out. This is just the instruments doing that little sweep when we first come in. Let's hear it in context first, actually. So that big warm sound that kind of cascades over that second verse is made up of got a guitar track, or a doubled guitar track rather, 2 layers of Hammond organ, and 2 layers of a Vox organ, and this is some other stuff a little bit later on. But here, check out that transition. Yeah, that's warm. I almost get like a Mac DeMarco vibe from that. So how I built this up was, as I mentioned before, I love doing lots of layers and sound design and that kind of stuff. So I started with a doubled up Strat, just scraping the chord. And it's hard pan, so you get that stereo interaction. I just love that. It really gives the mix depth, I think, when there's stuff doubled up. You don't want to do that with everything, of course, but certain elements. And then doubled up the Hammond organ. Yeah. So let me switch over to my piano cam here, and I'll show you the organ real quick. So that's it in the corner. It's a 70s model Hammond transistor organ. It's not one of the the famous like B3 models or anything like that. It's post-tone wheels. I got it for free off Craigslist, and it's got some interesting sounds on it. I really like that kind of, I don't know how I describe it. It's luminous. And I did that twice in octaves. So it's like a big cascading waterfall of just warmth coming down. Layer that with the guitar. And again with the Vox. The Vox is pretty subtle, but it's a little more. Whoops. Oh, looks like I accidentally turned that down. Let's bring that back in here for effect. So that's a quick one. And what I did with that was I piped it straight into the reverb. So it was 100% wet. And it goes into our verse 2 transition reverb, which is right here. So what I did with that is, instead of using the dry sound, that is 100% wet. It's the same as putting a reverb plugin on there and turning the mix all the way to wet. And it gives it a really pleasant echo. The Hammond and the guitar for me had a lot of top end, so I wanted some of that texture without necessarily the harshness, and I even rolled off a little bit too. So you can get away with layering a lot of sounds if you kind of like carve out different little spaces for it. So that one I thought, for example, was too much going on its own, but the reverb of it was really, really nice. And again, you can do that with like any sort of effect, you can like make layers of different things and have the reverb be 100% wet, and it gets like a new layer of depth that you might not get from just putting a reverb on something. So give that a try. Double something up and throw reverb 100% wet on something else, and you might have some pretty cool effects. And there was one last layer of Vox to complete the effect. Yeah, little phaser Vox. So as you can see, I went pretty in there with the automation on this. And the reason was I wanted to have that transition effect land nicely, but not be so dry when it comes out, because if it comes in that much and it just disappears, it's a little bit unsatisfying. So let's check that out with the rhythm section, and you'll hear that slowly fade away. Just kind of making room for the vocals and the more focal point of the track. I did the same thing with this organ too here. This is the organ that was in the chorus, and I have it sort of fading out all the way through the lick section, the main lick. So it's out by the time the verse comes around. But automation is a great way to make different elements bounce off each other and be a lot more dynamic. I noticed when I was playing that organ part and I just cut it off at the verse, it was a harsh transition. So fading it out really kind of let it breathe without ever being imposing. So moving on with that Vox, what I did to sort of take the place of the gap that it left is bring this retro phase sweep here. And the retro synth in Logic, again, is built in, totally free. It's a really, really great tool. Let me see if I can find the specific thing I used there. So here's that sound. very gentle. So yeah, this is retro synth. This has made quite a bit of appearances on the more recent BadCameo stuff. This is Logic only, maybe GarageBand too, as I said before, but it's awesome. It's got just so many great sounds, and it's free, built-in, ready to go. It's my kind of plugin. So that piggybacks off of that Vox sound that I automated down, and it's sort of the inverse of that volume-wise. So as the Vox comes in and sort of dies out, I have the phase sweep coming in at an equally, it's almost like a crossfade. So that way it still feels nice and full, but like it's moving throughout the track. So here's just those two together. And I can't go 2 seconds without adding some more transition goodness here. Apparently I'm really into that. So I did a similar thing that I did at the top of this verse. So as this, let me actually play just these things here. So I added a little more Rhodes and some more effects to kind of mark the second half of the verse. That's right here. And that little motif here, you'll probably recognize from the first verse. So just the Rhodes on that with a little bit of shimmer from a different Rhodes track. I just love that bright feeling of joy when it comes in. Here it is in the whole context of everything.
Dear friend Emily says she's not at ease. If I could help her, please. It's unusual. I hear a voice tremble.
Oh, and while all that's going on, I also have the shaker sort of making its entrance there. Adding a little bit of percussion in, or even a different instrument, is a great way to keep something moving, you know, while not drawing too much attention to itself. But yeah, you can hear that shaker come in at the same time as that does. Then it keeps going for the rest of the verse. So got a little rattlesnake action there. And one super, super crucial part of the second verse that I haven't talked about yet is this funky strat. I was really, really excited about this. I was in here just messing around with the song, you know, figuring what to do, how to spice up the second verse. So it was reminiscent of the first, but not being overly similar. And I started just doing a one-line simple thing. See if you can, let me play it on its own real quick, then you can hear it in the mix. Oh yeah. Super simple, just playing a D through there. And so here's the verse with that in there. It's pretty subtle. You can definitely notice it, but when the vocals are going, it's just a nice little jab in the ear saying, hey, you know, stay with us. We're picking it up. And so Londo laid that down after I was, you know, throwing the idea around with him. So that came out really cool. And have a little compressor on there just to, you know, sort of knock off those harsher edges and let some of that, just a little bit of that attack through. Very mild, just kind of holds it in place. And then for the second half of the verse, we added a harmony. So with all the sort of synth and keyboard transitions in there, combined with a new guitar line happening, changing up the verse, it's just super satisfying. So I wanted to, kind of capture that refreshing feeling that we got in the first verse from that Rhodes, which is also happening in the second verse, actually. I believe just in the second half. Yeah. So that glassy Rhodes we heard in the first verse doesn't come into the second half here. And the band and I, we do all sorts of stuff like this, just like break up the sections and make it feel a little different, you know, keep the song going. Because you got a lot of story to tell in only a few minutes, you know, so you want to make it count. But take a listen to this Rhodes coming in the second half.
My dear friend Emily
just really fills it up. Cool. So let's the first chorus is solid. You've heard that already, but let's jump right into the bridge actually. That's the second chorus. We do have one new element here. Let's talk about how we got into that second chorus. Got a little more transition action happening here. Whoops. Oh, fun fact, in Pro Tools, I found this out accidentally, but if you hold Shift while you're pressing play, it'll play back at half speed. That'll be our super chill house remix. Yeah, that's I totally found that out by accident one day. I thought for sure I'd broken it, but actually it's really good for if you need to like scrub your song for like hearing any noises or something sounds weird. That's a good little trick to have in the book. Anyways, back to where we were.
I hear a voice tremble, but the last time she wrote, she said I got my soul.
So the transitionally, the star of the show there is a saxophone stack. And let me take a look around and see if there's anything else that's fading in there. That might be it. We got the shaker. We already talked about that. Nothing new there. So yeah, let's take a listen to just the horns real quick. Can ignore that bend at the end there. But yeah, so this is a real sax part played by me, yours truly, and nothing crazy. Just did a big fat stack, swelled it in. I thought it was a kind of a cool way to keep that joyous, almost gospel sound and have a nice little swell so that the next chorus would really hit nicely. And then from there, I using Logic's built-in horn emulator, horn VST, I wrote out a more elaborate part for the chorus itself here. So you can see here is all this is the horn programming right here. And what I did was, let's take a listen to that real quick, because there's a lot of different articulations in there. And I'll just show you the horn plugin real quick. So again, built-in Logic sounds, perfectly usable. But the nice thing about these is there's all sorts of different articulations you can do, and it really spices things up. As I mentioned, I'm not the greatest sax player, so I did elect to program these. Plus on that, I could use tenor saxophone and trombone, which I don't have a tenor saxophone and I can't play trombone, much to my dismay. But take a listen to these and you can hear all the different articulations that are possible with that when you program it out. And let's hear that with the reverb and the full swell in. So you'll notice some of the notes are scooped, some are short. And this was all programmed here. So I've got the scoop track for the scooped alto notes, scooped tenor. And you can all pretty much see how it's all laid out here. But it did take a decent bit of time to figure out where I wanted to put each articulation and then actually make it happen. Glorious. I'm a sucker for that. Let's hear that one more time. Oh yeah, that's the stuff. Yeah, that gets me going. So it really gives the next chorus a whole different dimension than the first one, because you want to keep the familiarity, right? But you want to jazz it up a little bit. So that's where that comes in. And to sort of enhance that horn, I have a brass type synthesizer here that just kind of makes it even fatter. And with the horns. It really helps those horns have a little support there without drawing too much attention to itself. And I can't remember what synth I used there, but let's find out. Chorus 2 synth. That was Syntronic. Who makes that? I believe it's IK Multimedia. Yeah. So another great vintage synth library of sorts. This and Analog Lab cover a lot of ground. This looks like a little Moog type simulation here. Just great sounds. And I don't know if I did any special processing here. Just add a little bit of thickness on the Stephen Slate Revival. This plugin is free, so even if you're not subscribed to the Stephen Slate Pass, this one is available and you can use it. It's really pretty great for adding a little bit of harmonic content that you might not have on something that's bone dry. Without. And with. Yeah, it just gives it just a little bit of extra meat that I was looking for. It's pretty top heavy, that synth, so I wanted to give it a little help here. Another thing in this next chorus is I switched to a Wurlitzer for just a little more aggression on the chords. So I doubled that up with the Rhodes. The Rhodes was the real Rhodes, and then I have the Logic Whirly instrument here. Super crunchy. And with the horns. So fat. And you're going to throw a little organ to really jazz it up. Oh yeah, that's big. That's how I like it. So, let's talk about coming out of the chorus real quick here. There's a spot where not all the instruments, but a good amount of them slow down like a record player or a tape machine being stopped. And right before a big hit. So let's listen to that real quick.
We feel so cold. I guess my bed, my fault.
And there's just a super meaty kick hits right there. So I wanted to bring those out. Let's listen to that one more time.
Feel so cold. I guess my bed, my fault.
So what I did to help add a little bit of drama to that, let's see which tracks I did that on. But in Logic, there is a really, really cool feature. Well, let's backtrack a little bit first. So in Pro Tools, as many of you know, you can, if you have the Smart tool on up here, you can grab the corner and fade stuff out, right? That's just normal volume fade out, nothing fancy. But in Logic, another thing I shamelessly stole from Jacob Collier, if you're into these Logic breakdowns, definitely go check his out. They are just so full of great information on production, arranging, recording, and just hearing all of the things that you maybe wouldn't hear normally in the song, all sorts of hidden little things. It's so cool. So anyways, back to Logic. Here's a regular fade out. It'll just drop the volume down, nothing crazy. Just fades it out, right? But what you can do is, if you, at least on my computer, it's set up to control click. Right now I have right click assigned to trim. So if you don't have your right click button assigned, you can just right click and you'll get this menu here. And what you can do is switch it to slow down, which is like a tape stop effect. So check this out. And it's just such a cool way to add a new dimension to how your sounds can play off of each other. So what I did was I applied that to multiple tracks and I timed it so it slowed down and stops right before those kick hits. And it looks like I didn't do that on the organ track, but let's bring the drums in, or the rhythm section, for reference. So I think I mostly did this on the synth track that we were just checking out. Let's take a listen. Yeah, so let me take out the organ for clarity. But right before the kick, it does a tape stop like we just listened to. So that track is effectively muted when those hits are coming in. And then on the opposite end of it, I did the tape start, which is just the opposite of this and gives a slow, and then it jumps right in. So exciting. I played around with the timing a little bit, but when it's tucked in just right, it feels really good. So check this out. Listen to this synth track. And I might have done that with the Wurlitzer too. Yeah, so that's what I did there to help that really stand out when that hit actually comes in. Then on top of that, I'm a sucker for I don't know if there's a real term for this, but on the Hammond organ, if you kind of mash the keys and do a glissando down, there's just like a certain like excitement you get that wouldn't happen on a regular piano or a keyboard. Check this out. Yeah, that's meaty. So I put that right on the cymbal hit. So if we listen to our rhythm section one more time with that slowdown, just feel out how it slows down and then comes back in with a bang. Yeah, that's the stuff. I wanted to finish out that chorus strong. Great. So we're pretty far along in the song now. Let's take a look at the bridge because there is a lot of crazy stuff going on. So this track right here, let me just color them for reference. But there is a lot happening here. Let's make it pink. Yeah, that's a good time. Can't go wrong with that. Let's solo that. And there's probably a pretty good amount of volume automation happening here. So I'll just show you guys the automation view real quick so you can see all of these elements that are playing off of each other. And thankfully I didn't have to draw all these curves out by hand. I've got my handy dandy MIDI controller right here. So up at the top there's volume knobs that you can program to be automating the volume faders, pan, mute, I mean pretty much whatever you want. But what I would do is just, these are mostly synth layers. So I would sort of lay a bed down. As you can see, the track, this whole section right here is the bridge, right before the vocal part of the bridge comes in. So I automated all that, by hand with the faders. So I just close my eyes and just ride the knob and record the volume automation so I could just sort of place things exactly how I wanted them. And if it didn't work out, I could go back and touch it up. But having some sort of controller to make that part of the process easier it feels a lot more creative than clicking in here and like doing little edits with your mouse. Like that's no fun. That's tedious. But this is good fun right here. So let's jump back into that fully automated view here. And as you can see, some of it didn't have it. Some of this, most of these curves I drew out in Logic and then imported into Pro Tools, just so I could mix with that freedom. And then some of these sounds have built-in rises and falls, like this guy right here. So let's just listen to all the sounds happening in the bridge. And right there where that gong hits is where the actual bridge comes in, or the vocal part. So let's listen to that whole transition real quick.
We feel so cold. I guess it might be my fault. Get off your feet, walk out that door. It's slow.
So refreshing. Oh, that guitar is delaying like crazy. So the sort of the logic behind this part of the song is, well, the song is sort of about feeling isolated. Maybe if you're in like a new city, or you just feel trapped in a cocoon of your own making or somebody else's, and there's nobody to reach out to. That's kind of what the song is about on a brief level. And what I wanted to do here was sort of almost capture that feeling of being like stuck in your own headspace, and things are swirling all around you. So even though the song musically and melodically is pretty positive throughout, I kind of wanted this to be like, well, it's a bridge. I wanted it to be a nice little break from that almost, and just sort of capture that feeling of receding into yourself and not feeling like you can talk to anybody or you have anybody to reach out to. That everybody feels that way sooner or later. But as far as the nuts and bolts of how that happened, I started with this Atmos sound effect, and it's Spitfire Audio Labs is the name of the company. And let me just show you the plugin real quick. This is a totally free library, and they have a lot of really great samples. My library is not properly connected right now, but there's all sorts of stuff from like experimental strings. Well, let me look through. That's okay. But yeah, check that out. There's a lot of great sounds, instruments, sound effects, and they are really high quality. Another foundation of this was a little arpeggiated synth, just a little light. You'll hear it. Wandering across the speakers. Something to make it feel a little less serious, So from then I added a lot of string swells. So let's listen to some of those. Great bed. It's basically just a lot of different string effects. Some are the Spitfire BBC audio. Oh, let's see if that comes up here. Yeah, BBC Symphony Orchestra. It's a $50 plugin, but I believe at one point, or maybe it's still true, if you had like filled out a little survey from them, they sent it to you for free, and it's an entire orchestra with different articulations. So you can probably get that for free still, or it's pretty cheap. I love orchestral sounds, and that's a great way to get there without spending, hundreds of dollars on Contact or a fancy library like that. That said, I did also use Contact strings as well, but know that it is available. So I wanted a big swell kind of washing over you to provide a little break here. And then from there, I layered in some more synths and just little elements that will kind of like tickle your ears. So here's Analog Dream here. That is, I believe, free with Contact. And if you haven't tried it out yet, Contact Player is a great entry-level Contact device, and you don't have access to all their libraries, but it comes with a pretty good amount of stuff. So here's one of those examples. Really warm, pleasant sound. I like that a lot. I think it's found its way into a couple other BadCameo songs too. And so, yeah, as you can see, there's a lot of elements in here, but the key to making all this work was really the automation. So while the chorus was dying down, I automated out some of like the synthesizer here. That's coming down. So while that other stuff is fading in, there's other stuff from the chorus, like the organ's fading out, the cymbals are fading out, everything. So I wanted to be a sort of seamless transition into this brand new headspace that we haven't seen yet in the song or heard yet. And let's talk about some of the synth stuff I layered in. So we heard Analog Dream. This is a like glass. The name of the preset is a glass harmonica. It's not actually that sound, but it's a sort of bright, zingy thing that I added in to just help propel it forward. So that's a cool little sound there. That might be from the Kinetic library in Contact. So if you already have it, I believe the library is free. Let me see if I can track that down real quick. Oh, let me play that London Atmos sound real quick since it's printed out here. And that's just a London subway atmosphere recording. There's a few different types of those available in that Spitfire Audio Labs that I mentioned before. And I wanted to have a little bit of that muted cityscape sound effect in the background. Like you're stuck inside yourself, but all this action is happening around you and it's far away and you don't feel like you're a part of it, just to sort of capture that mood. But going back to the glass harmonica, let's see if my memory serves me here. So it's Contact. Yes, Kinetic Treats. This is a cool little library. The interface is pretty different. It's all these little toys. And let me play you the track here. So it's these really like warm, fun kind of sounds. And there's like little different elements here. You can, turn the dancer off and the robot, and there's little faders, and you can kind of like play with the toys. So it's a fun, like quirky little thing that sometimes has some cool sounds that you can work into your sound design and stuff like that. And as I mentioned, it's either free or very cheap if you have Contact. So that's a fun little toy I like to break out here and there for that. And then after that, we got some just pretty standard bass layered in, some synth bass. And if you don't have the subwoofer, that one reaches pretty low. So if you do, go ahead and crank that up and you can feel that a little bit. It just sort of helps the top end to get balanced out, because when that's fading in, it's just like adds this warm, rich bass. And throughout that bridge, I have these really, really light gong hits happening throughout. I wanted it to feel ceremonial a little bit, like you were lightly tapping a gong before you meditate or something along those lines. So I just liked the kind of mood that it creates there. And that's really what I'm doing with the section, is just establishing a mood. There's not a melody or a beat there necessarily. So it's just going to be a sort of period of self-reflection here. So now that I got myself into this mess, I have to get myself out of it, right? So I have a few more transitional elements that fade in a little bit later to usher in the singing part of the bridge. So let's check out those. Let's actually do the synth stuff first. So we got some Falling Stars. Very cool. An FM synthesizer. It's almost like that riser we talked about earlier in the track. This, in the context of the mix, this is very quiet. Have a similar thing happening here. So basically, I wanted a huge, exciting transition to come into this bridge. Because if you dig yourself into a hole like I did with all the synth soundscape action, you're going to need a compelling way to get out of there. So up next, I used a Cherry Modular synthesizer, which is another free great plugin. It's Cherry Audio Voltage, I believe it's called. Let's double check that here. Yeah, Voltage Modular. So this one's pretty cool. If you're a synth junkie, needs update. If you're a synth junkie, you could play with this for hours. I've only barely scratched the surface of the modular end of synthesizers, but this is free, and there's a dizzying amount of things you can do with it. It's got a lot of presets and all that, so that's what I use for this. It's just called Wind, and I appropriately named it Modular Wind on my track list here. So it's a little intimidating, but if you're into that kind of stuff, check this out, because it's got a lot of really cool stuff. But as far as the sound itself, it's really simple. It sounds like wind. So it's like a noise generator type thing that's swelling in, basically. Using like white noise, pink noise, brown noise is a great way to kind of spice up your productions. And you can sort of, hey, it's 2222. You can use like noise on like gated with a snare to give it a little extra excitement, use it as a transition, or even just like a little bit to make something sound a little less sterile. So even if you're not really into synthesizers and stuff like that, using a little bit of noise in your production can really add some excitement if it's, you know, tucked in, or even if it's not so subtle. So don't be afraid to experiment. It's just audio and a program. You know, nobody's gonna die, so have fun with it. So one thing that I was pretty excited to add here is a tape rewind effect. So while all this other stuff is going on, I also have layered in, it's basically the sound of a cassette tape or a VHS being rewound really quickly. So check this out. Pretty exciting stuff. So when you add all those transitional elements together, I'll throw in the gong in there too, because right at the downbeat of the bridge is a louder hit. As you can see here, everything before that has been pretty gentle. Then it comes in with a bang. Oh, and the last thing is this little rezo bird here. I like giving my track name something fun. So you'll hear this when it comes in. Check it out. I had a lot of fun putting this together, as you can probably tell. So when we do everything, this is just the bridge. This isn't even, you know, some of the other instruments I've layered in here. So it's a huge tension that's built up throughout this bridge, especially in the last few seconds when all of the freaky synth action and sound effects start to come in. But in the context of everything else, when that bridge drops, it's, we're back, you know.
Pick up your feet, walk out that door, explore the world.
And those vocals come in, it's just massive, massive, massive. Speaking of vocals, let's take a look at the harmonies next, because layering vocal harmonies, even though I am not much of a singer, this was all Londo, and he did an incredible job. Him and I sat together in here figuring out, we have his lead vocal line going through there, but the star of the show in this part is the harmonies here, which are all in blues. You can see there are quite a few of them. I think we doubled everything. So we sang each part twice. And then as a third layer, I put auto-tune on one of the doubles and put that right down the middle. So in just one part, there's 3 voices. So for example, if we let's turn off the group here. So here's just the 2 like natural singing doubles. And as you can see, I got them panned hard left and right here.
Pick up your feet, walk out that door.
And then, oh, sorry, I misspoke. These are quadrupled. So what I did was we had 2 natural takes, 2 auto-tune, just to give it a little extra, because the auto-tune will, you know, of course, react to that. So let me play 1 natural track and 1 auto-tune track. Hard pan, you'll hear the difference.
Pick up your feet, walk out that door, explore the world.
So it gives it a nice thickness. So that way we didn't have to sing every single part 4 times. Londo was a trooper for hitting these parts and even doubling them. So I just took it one step further, kind of doubled everything up. And we had a great time putting these harmonies together. That's one of my favorite parts of the process. Londo and I just chill here in this room right where I'm sitting, and we hop on the MIDI keyboards you can see here and write out some melodies and some parts. And it's just great, great fun. So we had this is a 3-part harmony with everything quadrupled, and let's just do it line by line and add the harmonies as we go.
Pick up your feet, walk out that door, explore the world, who you are.
And let's bring in the second harmony. And this bridge was fun because at the beginning we doubled the lead vocal, at least in terms of, not in terms of pitch, but the part. And then after that, we sort of did like a call and response, and then the vocals interplayed with the lead vocals, which was fun to mix it up that way. So after these harmonies, we'll play all the vocals together and see how that sounds. But here's the first two parts.
Pick up your feet, walk out that door, explore the world, who you are, you will see, not alone, no.
Angelic. Thank you, Londo. You're my hero. So 2 harmonies isn't going to be enough, right? We need 3 parts. I don't know who invented that rule, but I follow it. So we tucked in a lower part in here just to sort of glue it all together. The top 2 parts, as you can hear, were very melodic and soaring. So for this third part, being a lower part, we wanted to keep it a little more contained note-wise. So there's a little less movement underneath, and it kind of holds the whole thing together. So check this out.
Pick up your feet, walk out that door, explore the world, who you are, you will see, not alone, no.
Man, when we first put all those together and listened back, put a little reverb on there, wow. So satisfying. One of the best parts, I think. So the reason we kind of approach it this way is so that it wasn't fighting with the lead vocals too much. We sort of wanted the harmonies to almost be the focal point, you could say, with the lead vocal sort of a little more distant. And you'll hear in the mix that the harmonies are pretty up front, so we're keeping that the focus. But check out the lead vocal in comparison and listen for when it goes back and forth. It's fun.
Pick up your feet, walk out that door, explore the world for who you are. Then you will see you're not so alone. Not alone. No.
Yeah, that just made for a great contrast, we thought. So all good times in there. As far as the bridge, instrumentally, there's nothing too crazy going on. I really wanted to sort of, in terms of the keys and the arrangement, just kind of stay out of the way for the lead vocals to shine through. So let's listen to everything right here. But to glue it all together in terms of instrumentation, I started with this a Jupiter pad, and the sound is off of my Roland keyboard back here. It's a Roland RD700. I got tape machine in the back there. And if you've been at one of the original BadCameo gigs, that was my bottom keyboard for my 2 keyboard stack. These days I'm using just one to stay light on the road. But yeah, it's got some old school type Jupiter type sounds on there, which Roland made, of course. So this is a fun sound. Just a really rich, warm 80s type thing. A little chorus on there, just jumps right out of the speakers, hardly needs anything at all mixing wise. And another sound that I borrowed from the Roland is it sounds like a harpsichord, but it claims to be a 12-string guitar sound. But they're little high-end plucks just to accent those chord changes and have like a little counter melody in there. And I don't know, it just gives it like a different element that you couldn't get without it. I liked the punctuation that it provided. So check it out with all that stuff going on.
Pick up your feet, walk out that door.
Yep, let me try that one more time. I had the bridge transition muted here.
Pick up your feet, walk out that door, explore the world for who you are. Then you will see you're not so alone. No.
Yeah, the bridge bridge was probably my favorite part to work on, just because it was so satisfying to hear it all come together, and it's different from the rest of the track, as a bridge should be. So transitioning in the last chorus, the vocals are doing the heavy lifting. I didn't do anything super extravagant there to get out of it. We got the plucks going. There's a little synthesizer swell here. Just a little build. And of course, you cannot start the final chorus of a song without a big old if you listen to some of the BadCameo Out Loud stuff, there is more gong on there that you would expect. So if you happen to notice any on some of those tracks, go back and check them out, because it's a favorite trick of mine, just to throw a little bit of gong in there just to really smack home that last transition. But let's listen to just the vocals and the instrumental action here on the bridge. Anything holding chords. So let's take out like the drums and bass.
Get off your feet, walk out that door, explore the world from who you are. Then you will see you're not so alone. No.
Yeah, with singing and harmonies like that, you can't not have a banging last chorus. So this last chorus here, not too much different happening compared to the rest of it. The other choruses, that is. The horn section is still here. Of course, that's the same. I got the sax swelling in just a little bit underneath all those other transitions happening. So that's makes for a good time. Whirly, all the same characters as the last one, pretty much. Changed up the tone of this last organ a little bit. Just dirty as all hell, just to give it a little extra something. I guess the stars of making this last chorus feel just right is, well, that transition, we're coming out of the bridge and we're just dying for that familiar feeling again. But tambourine and claps, just a little bit of percussion will really spice up your arrangement. So when we get into that, we've got this shaken tambourine part and claps on beat tune 4 that were not there before. And even though a lot of it is really the same, well, Londo's vocals, of course, are, goes without saying, that's what really makes it. The energy he put into there is just incredible. And then just those little things really give it that extra spice. Makes it feel like a sing-along, with the claps and the tambourine going on. This last chorus is a celebration. So we have our little turnaround at the end here before our play out. So let's wrap this up and check out some of these last few things here. I did the same sweep down, tape slow down trick here at the end to do those hits. So I placed it a little bit differently than in the first chorus. I still have that mean old organ swipe here on those first rounds, but we did these hits 3 times, so I saved it to the very end just to put a cap on the ending of the last chorus proper before we get into that little jam out section at the end. God, I love that sound. I probably used it too much. Is that even possible? No, I take that back. So let's talk about the ending here. Basically, my approach here was to, again, make it feel like a celebration. And Dan came up with this really, really cool, he calls it a street beat, which is just a great name here. And it's just sort of like a walking down the street, almost a New Orleans type thing. It's just really easy going. Check this out. Here's just the beat. It's impossible to not feel cool when that beat's going. It's a fact. That's just chewing your bubble gum, walking down the street, having a great time. We'll throw in our rhythm tracks here, get a little extra action. Guitar playing the melody. up on whirly. Yeah, the whirly is doubling that up right from the get-go. Gotta have some organ, keeping it dirty, punctuating some of that. Then here I kept the claps going on 2 and 4, but I doubled them up just to make it really even bigger. Here's just one clap. And I think these were just Logic built-in drummer clap sounds. Logic has a great selection of drum kits built right in, and just about all of them have some sort of percussion, like tambourine claps, rim shots, that kind of stuff. So you might be surprised at the number of samples and sounds that you have built in just natively on your computer, you know. So, dig around. Don't be afraid to use stuff that is there. It's kind of like a little treasure hunt, going around and seeing what fits in just right. So that's one clap. Here's 2. It's a small difference, but there's just a little extra flam when you have another set of claps, and it makes it feel really big. So I kind of wanted to expand on that almost parade feeling we have at the end here. So after that, something I had a lot of fun with. Well, we did some gang vocals here, but we'll come back to that here. But this synth sound right here just really excites me like nothing else. Bam! That it's just nasty. Yeah. It's a Synth Brass. Can't remember which plugin it is, but that's all right. It doesn't matter. Any synth should be able to do this with that, is beyond the basics. So you'll hear those kind of punctuating the beginning of each section or each repetition when we go through that ending here. And to kind of expand on that more, I added a similar brass sound, but doing the percussive type things. So let's listen to just a little rhythm here. Let's skip the vocals for now. So here comes another bend, and we'll add in this synth brass here. I love synth brass. I used to not be the biggest synth fan, but diving in deeper and finding some fun sounds has really, really changed my outlook. So let's take a listen to just that. It's just a really percussive, almost trumpet-like sound. Little modulation on there really gets exciting. And combined with the other synth, it's just massive. Yeah. All right, so let's bring in the rest of the tracks here. I have some shaker going. I layered in a little cowbell beat. Let's listen to just drums and cowbell because this is a fun little pattern here. So I gradually added a little more percussion as it went throughout. I started with cowbell and drums. Then you'll hear the shaker come in, and then just a little bit of congas in the back at the end just to add a little texture. It's going to stick out more when it's just these beats, but within the context of the song, it's quiet, but you'll hear just a little extra push at the end just to make it nice and big. And then here I made the cowbell pattern a little more complex to kind of dance around the drums a little bit. And here comes the shaker. And let's add those congas back in. So a key part of this was I did not quantize these percussion parts or the drums for that matter. I think if everything had been perfectly all on the line, it would have taken out some of that excitement. I wanted to feel just a little flamed is a strong word, but a little loose. Walking down the street, capturing that parade vibe I was talking about earlier. And I think this does it. It's not perfectly rigid, which would kind of ruin the effect, I think. So here comes some congas. Yeah, that's the good stuff. So now let's talk about the vocals. As I mentioned, the lead vocals are kind of doing the same line as the guitar and the organ and that kind of stuff. So what we did here was, actually, we didn't even plan this out, but we had a bunch of extra takes of Londo singing that last part. So I said, hey, why not just double this up with what we already have, just to give more of that big group happy feeling. We're sort of coming out of that inner despair that we kind of explored in the bridge and that kind of thing. So this is really our way of ending the song on a positive note. And these are all doubled up. I did the same trick I did with the bridge vocals and used some auto-tune doubling kind of tucked in underneath just to give it a little more body and just to fill it up a little bit more. So here's the gang vocals on its own. And actually, let's do the lead vocal too.
We so cold, we so cold. World is cold, world is cold. We so cold, we so cold. The world is cold, world is cold. We so cold, we so cold. World is cold, world is cold. We so cold, we so cold. World is cold, world is cold.
And then for the last one, we added some harmonies, stacked it up, gives it a little extra pizzazz, a little razzmatazz at the end there.
World is cold, world is cold. We so cold, we so cold. World is cold, world is cold. We so cold, we so cold. World is cold, world is.
And you put it all together.
We so cold, we so cold. World is cold, world is cold. We so cold, we so cold. World is cold, world is cold. We so cold, we so cold. World is cold, world is cold. We so cold, we so cold. World is cold, world is cold. We so cold, we so cold. World is cold, world is cold. We so cold, we so cold. World is cold, world is.
Lovely. So one last little thing before we wrap this up. At the end here, you might have noticed I scrolled by it a few times, but I have a little vinyl track here, and it's really, really quiet. But all this is a sample of a needle on a record player and the little gentle crackles and pops and that oh so satisfying sound when you drop that needle in, and it's just the sound before your track comes up. Oh, it's so good. But it's really quiet, but it is here. Let's take a listen. Super simple, nothing to it. I just filtered out some of the very low and the very top. And truth be told, you probably won't even hear it in the track. Or you might notice like a little just tiny thing escaping here and there. And I kind of wanted to just throw that into, add just a little bit of warmth to the end, a little graininess, make it feel almost nostalgic and just give it a little extra excitement. In the digital realm these days, it can be really easy for things to sound clean and sterile, especially if you're using all, like virtual instruments and stuff like that. So I think adding an element of bygone era, with a little vinyl or a little saturation like we talked about, I think that's crucial to the process. It just kind of takes the edge off, makes things a little easier on the ears. So even if you're into like electronic, hip hop, stuff like that, stuff that's more based on like digital sounds or stuff that you get out of the computer, it can be a great way to bring in elements of that sort of analog world. It just sounds really, really good, I think. You don't have to go to the level of, putting in vinyl noise or anything like that. But there are actually plugins that let you do that. Isotope has a free vinyl plugin. It's more noise, basically. We talked about like saturation earlier, which is one way to introduce a little bit of noise in there, a little bit of bite. We talked about the vinyl sound effects. That buzz is a little harsh. You can add a little dust. That one felt a little harsh for this song, so I wanted something with a little less edge. But this is a great plugin for like adding, again, if you do like lo-fi or hip hop and you want that like old school sound, if you actually put a track through here, you can like pick how old the vinyl is, the different RPMs, and it all gives you different effects. So this can be a really cool way to, you can even do like warp, so it'll kind of like detune your sound. So play around with that. If you put that on like guitar, for example, you can get a really, really cool lo-fi guitar. Let's do that real quick just for fun before we say goodbye. So let's warp the crap out of it, and you'll hear it kind of bend. So that's an extreme example. But if you dial in a little bit less, it just gives it a cool effect. And we talked about tape stop earlier, fading out in Logic. But if you are not in Logic, you can use this, again, free plugin, and it has a spin down button right here, which will do the exact same thing. You will have to automate it or record it somehow. But check this out. Oh, and it's gone. So that's a fun little thing. We've used that to kind of lo-fi or dirty up some stuff that's just a little too clean coming out. And if you're a little more adventurous and you have room, we've got a tape machine back there, and our mastering guy prints our final masters to tape. So it really just adds a different element, that you might not necessarily get. Digital technology is great. It's incredibly convenient. So why not use the best of both? You can have the precision of digital and give yourself a little analog sleaze there if you so desire. But this has been really fun. So hopefully you've been at the very least entertained and maybe even learned something today. But I'll leave you with just checking out this very last view of all the tracks here. This is like the bird's eye view of the session. So these are all the drum tracks. All the drums were my top and bottom. Individual cymbals. And you can see all the automation that went into it. So we put a lot of love in our tracks, that's for sure. So I appreciate you taking the time to join me in walking through this and just sort of seeing what goes on behind the scenes. This ran way longer than I was expecting, which is good though. There's a lot to talk about here. So if you're seen this before, or you've already heard something, feel free to skip around. There's all sorts of stuff that we talk about in here. But this is the session, as you can see. There's the bridge. Let's see what kind of track count we got here. Oh, looks like I was just shy of the 128 Pro Tools limit, which is, I'm pretty happy about that actually, because that would have been a pain having to collapse some tracks down. But yeah, with the vocals, triple and quadruple stacked and all the layering and sound design that goes into it, you can definitely see why the track count gets run away pretty quickly here. So that's pretty much it. Thank you again so much. This is the first one ever. So in the future, we're hoping to do these live, so there can be a little bit of back and forth in like the chats, and maybe talk about some other stuff. We didn't get too much into like theory or specifics of harmony or anything like that, but there's a lot more that we could dive into. So thank you so much, and have a great night.